that we get. Okay, sorry, get my recording progress off. Okay, so I've titled, subtitled this Weiji, Threat and Opportunity. Some of you may know the Chinese for crisis is weiji, which actually is made of two characters, wei and ji. Ji is opportunity and wei is kind of threat. So although at first blush it might seem that anything to do with advertising guidelines is quite negative, I think in the long run we'll see this as a positive event, and hopefully it will enable us to be better at putting forward the case for acupuncture. Okay. What? I'm not. Excuse me, I'm just going to have to escape. Well, there you all are. Technological. I'm going to go. Okay, just moving now. So today's webinar has these sections. We'll start with a little bit of the background. Then I'll talk about the professional standards.
Sorry, just so you're not sharing your presentation.
Ah, okay. How do we get that done then? Can you still hear me, Helen? Can you still hear me?
Still hear you. We can see you, but we just can't see your presentation.
I can't find Zoom at the moment. Right. Share screen. Share. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Sorry about that. It wasn't. If I share my screen, it's stopping me from moving the slides on for some reason. Any idea?
Let's see.
Maybe if I try this. No. Okay. Previous. I can do it with the mouse. Okay. Right. So I'll have to use the mouse. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'll go through the background, the Professional Standards Authority's concerns, then what the conditions are that they've actually placed on us. So a condition is something that we have to do in order to maintain our accredited status, and the timeline that they've given us to do it, which is a little bit tight. Then I will cover the proposed solutions and then discuss a little bit more about why this is a threat to us, how it can sort of negatively impact, has the potential to negatively impact the British Acupuncture Council. But at the same time, there are opportunities, and that's what I will talk about subsequently. These are opportunities to do a better job of putting across the case using the evidence base. Then I'll finish off with a roundup of what you need to do. So this is about what you have to do in order to help British Acupuncture Council meet its condition from the PSA. And then what you can do, which is about understanding what can be done to better promote the evidence for acupuncture. Okay, so the background. The Professional Standards Authority received a concern about some BAcC members advertising. So that's an ordinary member of the public who's written to the Professional Standards Authority and said, I've looked at websites and things of British Acupuncture Council members, and they don't appear to be in line with advertising guidelines. So we've been sent a spreadsheet which contains 20 or more of our members' websites, links to them, and pointing out what they believe would constitute a breach of the guidelines. So it's important to point out now that the PSA are not putting any additional guidelines upon us. They're just asking us to do the advertising in line with the advertising Standards Authority, so that's the ASA, which is you're already signed up to because it's part of the professional code of conduct that you will adhere to the advertising guidelines. It's just that some people have not, or potentially in breach of that, and we as an organisation need to find ways to help our members stay within the guidelines and basically monitor and prove to the Professional Standards Authority that we are doing the job and we are making sure that everyone is abiding by the advertising guidelines. Okay, so what is their first concern? Okay, what they noticed, or what some people have noticed, is that on some of our members' websites, they may have a list of conditions and a sentence that runs something like this. I'll see if I can do the pointer. Yeah, so see the BAcC's fact sheets for the clinical evidence that acupuncture is effective for the following conditions. And then there'll be a list of conditions. So what you might understand is that if you're putting in knee pain as a condition, that has the potential to be within the advertising guidelines because there's quite good evidence for knee pain. However, obesity, there isn't such good evidence, and therefore that would be a breach of the guidelines, because this is assuming that someone looking at your website will not click through to actually read the evidence that is on the British Acupuncture Council's website, the fact sheets. They will just see your sentence and assume that all conditions are supported by evidence. Obviously, to some extent, it depends on how this main sentence is written, but it can be quite problematic. I'm going to have to switch it off each time. It's not very helpful. Okay, so the second and third PSA concerns are there were some general issues with the language. Okay, this can't be helped in some respects. It is quite difficult. It's just some people using the word treat and then a condition that breaches the guidelines. Okay, but that's what we've been used to before, ever since these guidelines were sort of introduced. So there's no change in what we were required to do in that respect, but we do have to make more of an effort to help the membership get in line with the guidelines. And so one element of this, after this webinar, will be other webinars and workshops to help you do that. But fundamentally underlying it all, you can use the copy advice service. And there's a link at the end of this PowerPoint for that. So the copy advice service will look at all your advertising and tell you whether or not it's going to fall within the guidelines, or give you an indication. And that's very important. And it's free, and it takes about 24 hours to get it done. Okay, so the big take-home message, if you're any doubt about your marketing, you send it to the copy advice service and get their approval. Okay. The third concern was with some advice that the BAcC was giving to its members, because ASA guidelines apply to advertising. And there was a line within our advice, which was basically saying, advertising is one thing, but once you're talking to someone in the clinic, then the advertising guidance, I'm paraphrasing, but can go out the window to some extent. You don't have to worry about it. So they were a bit concerned that would lead some of our members to be misleading their or potential patients about the evidence base for acupuncture. Okay, so those are the three things that we have to deal with, and they've given us a timeline. We effectively have to find a way to address the issues on the website and the advice that we're giving. And we've been given 3 months to do that, or a bit less, because we need to do a report at the end of July. And then possibly the most tricky thing is we need to monitor our members' advertising. So we have to have a method in which we we'll select members, look at their advertising, and if we're in any doubt that it's in breach of the guidelines, then we might have to take some action. I'll talk about that shortly. And then in October, we have another report basically saying how the advertising, how the monitoring is going. Okay, so a proposed solution. Many of you would have heard of the evidence pyramid, okay? And I think probably the simplest way to look at is by the second thing, or the third, the advertising advice we were giving. When someone's in your clinic and they ask you, is it acupuncture any good for insomnia, say, you can, if you know it, you can say there is some RCT evidence, but it doesn't reach the pinnacle of what's called the gold standard of having a systematic review and clinical guidelines. And then you give your expert opinion. And that's the case for obesity and any condition. You let the person know that you're speaking from the position of your expert opinion. It's not that you're claiming there is clinical evidence, et cetera, and the language is definitive and objective. Yes, acupuncture works for that. You just have to phrase it, well, the clinical trials have never been run to look at acupuncture for IBS or whatever, or not many. Therefore, all I can say is from my experience, we can do X, Y, and Z. Okay, so referring to the evidence pyramid in your discussions and let the person know you're talking from expert opinion, or whether there are some RCTs, or even is there a gold standard systematic review of meta-analysis you can land on. With regards to the BAcC Acupuncture Council webpage, what we will be doing is developing what we call the research landing page. And this will flag to people, interested parties, about the evidence pyramid. So it's basically saying evidence is gradable. It's not as simple as acupuncture works, doesn't work. There's good evidence for acupuncture, there's reasonable evidence, there's poor evidence, as in the quality of the evidence is low. None of these actually mean that acupuncture doesn't work. It's talking about the quality of the evidence. So the landing page will take interested parties through that. It will highlight 3 things that are of particular concern for an acupuncture researcher, let's say. The availability of evidence. For a lot of conditions, we simply don't have evidence to say either way. There just haven't been good clinical trials to do it. We will have to flag issues of sham acupuncture, because many of the sham acupuncture, all of the sham acupuncture procedures are by and large active treatments, and that diminishes the apparent effect of acupuncture. And quite often, the real acupuncture is not the quality of the work that many of our members would be doing. It's suboptimal, okay? So there will be a research landing page, and what we'd be doing is advising you as members to link to the research landing page and not direct hyperlinks to the fact sheets and the conditions themselves. And then the final thing is use the copy advice service again and again for your own website. Okay. So the monitoring, which is potentially the more difficult, I suppose, or uncomfortable if you get called up to be monitored. What we propose to do, and it is a proposal, this hasn't been passed off by any committee as yet, I should point that out, because at the time we just don't have that. And we have opportunities to change the monitoring process if we get good constructive feedback from the membership. So we propose to start by random selection of members. Okay, so maybe 1%, maybe 2% of you every year will get an email. And in that email, you will simply be asked to provide evidence from the copy advice service that they've approved your advertising. Okay, that's what we want. And you will send a PDF or whatever format it's come in to us. and we can tick it off. It's all nice and simple. You can do that tomorrow. You could start if you wish to, but alternatively, you might be busy and doing other things, and you may wish to wait for getting your call-up email, as it were, in which case you have to contact Copy Advice Service, get them to approve, and potentially make any changes if they request changes. And then after 6 weeks, or before 6 weeks, you will hopefully be able to send us the evidence from Copy Advice that they've approved your website. If you don't do it, if you don't delay, then unfortunately we've got a 6-week deadline. And because not adhering to the advertising guidelines is a breach of your professional code, then we have to take action. So that's not good for us, and I presume not good for anyone out there. So we want to avoid as much as possible having this happen. Okay. So just take a little step back a minute and a cup of tea. I said that was the PSA have told us that they received a concern. Now, we don't know, and that they have their right to privacy, of course, who made the concern. However, there is an organization called the Good Thinking Society. And they quite frequently put in, I believe, complaints to the Advertising Standards Authority and the Professional Standards Authority about people's advertising. So you go on this, and this is kind of their news feed of all the stories that they've got to do with the ASA, and a news feed of all the PSA. Okay, so it's not someone who the people feel that acupuncture is not a very useful therapy, and they involve themselves in this way. So to move on these threats, basically, if the membership is happy and they just get their marketing in line with the guidelines, then the BAcC is happy, and we can all basically have a party and dance together because nothing untoward has happened. We can keep doing what we want to do, and we can deal with the opportunities, which I will talk about in a minute. However, if a certain or a significant number of members are unable or unwilling to provide the Copy Advice evidence, and this puts in BAcC will have to do the professional conduct hearings and so on. This will cost the British Acupuncture Council money. It will cost us time. And obviously, if you're very unhappy and you leave, that diminishes the size of the British Acupuncture Council, and etc. And those people who are skeptical of acupuncture and don't want us to be advertising anything whatsoever and reduce our presence on the internet will be having party. And they also have an opportunity because they can continue putting in more and more individual complaints about our membership. So it can go around in something of a vicious circle. It's very easy to put into a complaint. It just takes a template email, look at somebody's website, fill in a few words and send it off. It takes 10 minutes probably. But to defend the case, you have to go through all of your website, get the evidence, justify it, and we as an organization need to give you due process. So that's why it's time and money. Even if you walk away, it's not meant to sound threatening, I'm just saying, it's not the PSA that guidelines we're technically in breach of, it's the advertising. So people can still make complaints about your website, even if you're not in an accredited register like the British Acupuncture Council, in which case you have to deal with the consequences of that, because the ASA can get in touch with you and tell you to change your website. So you can't, it's wisdom of no escape, to steal a phrase from Buddhism. You can't quite escape from the advertising guidelines. Right. So just to go into a wee bit more detail on why we want you to use the copy advice. Why? First, it's free and it's the best thing. It means that the British Acupuncture Council, the office, myself, or anyone else doesn't have to spend time evaluating your websites, because somebody else professional will do it for us. So this is why we don't want, if you're the member here, for you to send the advertising material to us to be judged. We want the evidence from copy advice. Why? If we make a mistake, okay, so we let something pass that shouldn't pass, the BAcC can then be criticised for encouraging misleading advertising. So that can be blown out of proportion, that we are encouraging our members to mislead the public, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that would inevitably mean whoever's judging your website from the British Acupuncture Council point of view would have to play it very safe in our judgments. So in essence, every member's website would end up looking like the British Acupuncture Council's website, because we've had that approved by the copy advice service. Okay, so that's the kind of negative thing. But here's the positive. You, the membership, are as capable of looking at the advice from copy advice service and ASA as we are as individuals. And you may have good ideas, okay, about how to express it is what you want to do, especially for people who have a specialism, I think. So you have a good idea, and that goes to the copy advice, and we get approval that that terminology is okay. And this becomes part of our information repository. So we know that in the office, and we can feed that back to the wider membership. So we can enhance overall, use your creativity to enhance how we talk about what we do on websites. We build up a repository of information. So there's a double reason. One is to avoid the negativity that BAcC is told, well, you're encouraging bad advertising. But the other thing is that we as a collective organization can build up our knowledge on how to deal with this issue, because more and more of your creative ideas can be taken up. Okay, so let's move on to something much more positive. For those of you who are uninterested in research, just try and bear with me. For those of you who are interested, you may know a lot of this already. But since the fact sheets were done, and since any advertising standards authority issues with acupuncture have really been concerned, there has been a lot more evidence published on acupuncture. And what we want to do is utilize the good evidence for chronic pain, the gold standard evidence for chronic pain, to get across two key messages. First, that acupuncture is effective. You can't have the skeptics just saying acupuncture doesn't work. And then because it does, and we've got the evidence for chronic pain, you should be pointing people to this paper. So published in 2017, massive systematic review, 17,000 people. The other key thing from this review is acupuncture is not a placebo. And this is very important. So people believe that it's not just that acupuncturists are nice people and we chat to you for 25 minutes or whatever. And this is a second function of the landing page, is to let anyone who knows, who's interested in acupuncture research, they first land and they learn that where there is gold standard evidence, it shows two things. Acupuncture is effective, acupuncture is not a placebo for chronic pain. Therefore, the second thing that happens, this is a neutral party, a patient, a stakeholder, a doctor, whoever, understands acupuncture works, not a placebo for chronic pain. I believe this will mean they're more positive when they look at the clinical evidence for depression, hay fever, and IBS, okay? Because they'll have an understanding that it does work for some things. So it will help improve the way they look at it. So this is another added benefit. Step 3. One thing that we haven't done so well until now, I believe, on our fact sheets, is to highlight these 2 key issues with the evidence. So quite often, the acupuncture given in clinical trials is not good quality or not good enough. And very often, always, sham is active. And we need much greater awareness amongst the general public, amongst stakeholders, the authorities, the doctors and everything, that these 2 things are going on. So what we will be looking to do is, when we update the fact sheets, which need doing anyway, is looking to get a small group of people together to develop these new sections where we look at the clinical trials, basically evaluate the acupuncture and evaluate the sham. Okay. So another opportunity which relates directly to the Advertising Standards Authority. If we manage to run our system well, and in October, the Professional Standards Authority here are very satisfied with what we've done. We haven't wasted a lot of time and energy on professional conduct. We've just gone through this pre-6-week cycle. People have had their websites flagged, they've made the changes, we've moved on, all brilliant. We can go to the Professional Standards Authority and work with them to go then to the Advertising Standards Authority, because I spoke to the PSA about a month ago about the issues with advertising, and I hope that they will agree to support us in asking the ASA to put greater emphasis on what's called pragmatic research. So essentially, not stress so much about acupuncture versus sham, but give more weight to the evidence of acupuncture versus physio, medication, etc., in evaluating whether or not we can say there is evidence that works. At the moment, the strong emphasis is on sham, but it should, I believe, be on pragmatic. Don't worry if that's too confusing or whatever. Basically, if we organize ourselves, respond well, hopefully the PSA will support us in this petition to the ASA. Okay, so something to remember, okay. Fundamentally, there is research in everything, and some of you are interested and some are not. But I just want to remind everyone that if this is you, the acupuncturist, you treat someone and that person gets better and they tell other people. And it's this process that has led to the big research. No one would have done research into acupuncture if people hadn't been treated already and said they got better. We get the evidence, it goes to a committee like NICE, we potentially get more credence, more people get on board, they get treated, and they have a word, and then you get into a virtuous circle. And this has been going on for many years. And although it might seem slow, the fundamental engine is the membership, people like yourselves, treating people and getting them better, okay? So I've got 2 little bits of Chinese, don't worry if you can't read it. So I think many of you will be very familiar with this in English, okay? This says Nu Er Nao Zhi, which is taken from The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And what it means is, if your opponent gets angry easily, then you should irritate them, okay? So I certainly learned this when I was in my first year, when people talk about making people, when the liver is overstimulated, people get angry, you can't think clearly. This is from The Art of War, and it basically means the same thing. And this is Qin Er Li Zhi, same passage from the Art of War. This means that if your opponent is united, then you should divide them. Okay, so I think it's important that we understand what's going on and remain collectively working to promote what we want to do, and not, hopefully the membership will not be feeling that it's the office, myself or anyone else sort of trying to be the big authoritarian hand. We're not. We just need, because we have to abide by advertising guidelines, we need to make sure that we are collectively doing that. Okay, so to begin to finish off, what do you need to do, or what do I need to do? Check your advertising, and if in doubt, and if you want, contact the copy advice service, okay, and hopefully you can get through to that link. It's very easy to find with the Google copy advice service, comes right up. We would like you to remove any direct hyperlinks to the fact sheets, just out of precaution, and then link to the research landing page when it arrives. So you may know that website is being redeveloped. Hopefully very shortly the research landing page will be there, and we'll flag that to you and you can link to it. Fundamentally, this is about protecting yourself, that you don't want to be dragged into any sort of bad publicity. Someone tried to portray yourselves as someone who misleads people, etc., etc., etc. I believe it's not worth it. And by following the procedures, using copy advice and everything, then hopefully we'll have no professional conduct issues to deal with, even though we monitor 20 people or whatever, no issue will arise. And that's fantastic, because then we will have free resources to do more promotion, etc., etc. Yeah. So what can you do? Did I catch everything? Yeah. Discuss evidence in relation to the evidence pyramid. This is what we're going to talk about. What can you do? So we're working on, in the office, using some of the key data from the big systematic reviews to create posters. And this is a draft version of one, just to highlight the difference, how effective acupuncture is. So out of 100 people treated, so 50 in each group, half of the 25 people who had acupuncture got better, 15, so it's quite a big difference of people who had physio, etc. So if you're not interested in researching, don't feel fine, don't worry about it, just stick with the basic, what you need to do. But if you can, be prepared to talk a bit more about the good evidence that we have, and we'll be providing posters and the like to help you do that. Then, if you want to be one of these people that evaluates sham and Viram means real acupuncture, that's brilliant, and you can help myself and others in developing new sections for the research fact sheets, okay, which is going to highlight these problems that we have. Important to remember, you don't have to do research to do that, because we can support you, I will support you. You have to be an acupuncturist, really, and it's about the acupuncture we're evaluating. So if there's one treatment for psoriasis or whatever, we know that that's not going to be enough, okay? So these are the first treatment, or first conditions that we'll be looking at. It's not fixed, it's just my allergic back pain, blah, 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 blah. And this is the second stream, and we'll be working through them all as we go. Okay, so conclusion, if we unite and everything, we've got this, it's not a problem, we can move on and we'll be stronger and better for it. Shall we have time for questions? Helen, are there questions come through? And I think ideally if you can raise your virtual hand, which is the little glove somewhere on your screen.
Yeah, so if you hit the reactions button, there's a raise your hand option, or Ian, if you click on the chat, there's some questions for you there.
Right, how do I do that? Participants remote control. I think I need to take this pointer off, it's distracting me. Okay. If there's a question there, Helen, you can read it to me.
Yes, so Chrissy is asking, if you don't have a website, how about other forms of advertising?
It all applies. That you can be sort of brought before the proverbial beak, as it were, and charged for misleading. I think all of the advertising that's come in as a complaint has been websites, as in people, I guess, for convenience on their part. But you would still, if your advertising doesn't meet the guidelines, you're still in breach of the professional codes. But the leaflets and things that we've put on that have historically been on the BAcC's website, they were all checked with copy advice beforehand, so they're all in accordance. If in doubt, send it along to copy advice. This is the main thing. Yeah, hopefully that answered the question. So do I scroll through and take the first question?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a page on the BAcC website explaining the difference between traditional acupuncture, dry needling, and sham acupuncture? There's a drafted page. We've been working on this, and as yet we haven't agreed a draft. So I've written something, and I've been pushing it past a couple of the committees, professional recognition working group, etc., to see what they think. But at the present, no, there isn't, I think. If you don't have a website, how about other forms? We've gone through that, Chrissy. Have the 20 been deemed to be in breach, been notified about this by the BAcC? Not yet, but those people who websites are not deemed but potential breach, I will be emailing them early next week. No, there's only, so this is Paula. Which copy advice service does the BAcC use? There are loads of them. There is only one, and it will come up under the ASACAP website. There is a link on this PowerPoint which will go up, and you can get through. But if you have any problems at all, or you're unsure, you can email me. But as I say, the Advertising Standards Authority, there is a very official website, and it's ASACAP. I think if I go back, no, there, you can see that, asa.org.uk. So it should look like that. Bespoke copy advice service. It's quite hard to read the title. Can we get a link to this research? Yes. You can even have the full reference, and all of these. This one's about the sham acupuncture, written by me, surprisingly enough. This one's about the reliability, or forming a reliability assessment of the real acupuncture, and this is the main systematic review. Now, I should point out, I don't think the acupuncture is good enough in this review, but it does its job. It shows that acupuncture works. And all of these are free to download online. You don't have to have like a university access or pay 30 quid for it. So that's the title, Chrissy. And someone is kindly put in that, so I could have. Okay, that's fine. Chronic pain isn't in the current list of conditions listed as likely to be accepted by it. Right. It is hard that the ASA in their ruling doesn't seem to accept us saying NICE recommends blah blah blah. And this is from Helen. Absolutely, Helen. Absolutely. But what I think we need to do is get the PSA on our side, and then we go back to the ASA in collaboration potentially with British Medical Acupuncture Society, but certainly with the PSA. What we don't want is to be in a position where the PSA is still calling us up on the advertising, and then we're going to ASA, because that's a bit of a mess, time allocation wise internally, but it's also just not good. We can sort this out in 3 months and then we can move forward, because it is time to go back to the ASA and say, your guidance is a bit too restrictive. And that's what I meant about the pragmatic research in particular. And then another one. Isn't it ironic? List a million conditions. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, this is one thing. Being an accredited register, hopefully, will provide more and more benefits to members. I think the last series of webinars, as you will know, was about the NICE guidelines for primary chronic pain. Okay, so what has been happening? Some people have made what's called commissioning guidelines, okay, for doctors to look at, GPs, etc., or pain clinic managers, about how to commission acupuncture because of these guidelines. And in the guideline copy that fortunately a member sent to us, these actually include the British Acupuncture Council, so the AACP and the BAS. The latter two are, of course, statutory regulated professionals, but a doctor, a GP, can recommend and basically do business with, in a sense of setting up a service with someone who's on an accredited register. But they, as I understand it, they can't do that for so-and-so blogs in the street who's not in an accredited register. And if you think about it from the GP's point of view, they will naturally want that assurance anyway, that there is a professional organisation and it's accredited. So it is unfortunate, but I don't know whether people are necessarily more drawn to a high street store because of what's pinned in the window. There is a generic advertising that's out there. People will still feel maybe more comfortable seeing our members going to the NHS website, which again has British Acupuncture Council. There's a link on it, but not other traditional acupuncture things. So yeah, walking past the window, you probably think that's a bit off, but it's the situation we are in. What about review platforms where patients describe how acupuncture has helped them? Yeah, that all goes into the guidelines of how to advertise and the patient testimonials. You are still allowed to include testimonials. No change to those guidelines. So what was happening before is still happening. And Lynn, does the BAcC still do the printed advice sheets to purchase? Sorry, my daughter. I'm not quite sure which sheets those are, so I'll have to pass on that one. Sorry, but you can email me, Lynn, if you wish, and I will look into it for you. Maybe someone else can answer in a minute. There are lots of members, so a lot of people to work on getting copy advice insurance. Yeah, that's why you don't, if you're reasonably confident and don't do it straight away. That's why we've got the 6-week window, that you have 6 weeks to, if you get contacted, you're sort of randomized, a bit unlucky. You get, excuse me, got a distracting daughter. If you, where's it go? Hi, Ian. Can you take her away? Sorry about that.
What did I say to you?
Shh. There are lots of members get copyright. Yeah, so don't worry and take your time unless you're particularly concerned. It's fine. They're doing lots of other things as well, and it's a free service. Where do we stand on facial acupuncture? No evidence on that as far as I'm aware, or not strong enough evidence. So it's about finding the language to let people know that's what you're doing. No change in that respect. So the guidance hasn't changed. That's the advertising standards guidelines. So participate in upcoming workshops if you're in any doubt. Use copy advice service if you're in doubt. Blah, blah, blah. Is it helpful? Have I missed one? Testimonials. Karen, thank you. Is it helpful for us if we submit our sorry, that jumping. Is it helpful to us, the BAcC, if we submit our which makes no claims to copy advices? It doesn't win us brownie points if more examples of members advertising pass. And no, it doesn't win us any brownie points. We're assumed to be in line with the guidelines. But that's not the same as making no claims. There are claims that you can make. You just have to be careful or particularly careful. Lynn, the BAcC still has leaflets for sale in packs 100. They will soon be available again. Okay, that's an answer. Thank you, Anne. Sorry, I should have looked at that. Thank you, Lynn. I intend to use this. What are the timescales for the BAcC giving information on the evidence pyramid for conditions with a view to having an effect on us updating our website? Okay, I just reiterate, that's going to change the fact sheets. Okay, and it's going to be an ongoing process. It's a bit like painting the Golden Gate Bridge, because the evidence is constantly being renewed. The fact sheets need to be constantly renewed. We want to get a substantive number of them out again as soon as possible, or updated as soon as possible. That depends a lot on how many people volunteer. I mean, I can do it all myself, but it will take a long time. And I also really want those of you who specialized in particular conditions that you might see in either of these two boxes to sort of come forward and have your 2 pennies worth. It's kind of about strengthening the organizational knowledge of what we know, and more people who can discuss the evidence when appropriate. Okay, so we haven't got a fixed time scale because it's ongoing, but you will be able to because we will want you to, your website hopefully will just be linking to the landing page, and then once someone's on the landing page, they will scroll down and choose the condition that they're interested in. Will the BAcC give samples of ideal websites to guide us? Well, you've got samples of the language that can be used from the leaflets, which you can download. What we will be asking once I get in touch, if I flick back, we will be collating information from the copy advice as it comes in. So we'll be able to refine our advice more and more. But I think if you take the leaflets and how they talk about specific conditions, then that's the best starting point. We will be updating the advice that we give regarding advertising. So there will be like a supplement to the professional code, which will be titled The Guide to Advertising, I think it's this putative working title. So that will be coming out and we will be looking at it. I think it's important that you keep your websites as your individual expressions of yourself personally, but obviously we will help as much as we can in giving a variety of language you can use to talk about the conditions. But when you're talking about what it is you do and the Chinese medicine or the Oriental medicine side of it, then you're freer because that's not related to the biomedical view, I suppose. Could you summarize what we might say to colleagues who weren't here to encourage them to go through this process. Thank you, Paloma. That's the hardest question yet. I can, but what I'm going to do is get a small, well, hopefully not too long a piece written tomorrow or Monday, which we'll be putting up on the website, effectively explaining everything that I've said here. This has been recorded. You will be able to access it. So people will be able to view the webinar, even if they weren't able to meet it today. So you will have a choice of reviewing the webinar, which is probably as easy as anything else, or reading through a summary of the main information. Okay. It applies, yeah, on Google Ads. It's everything. And unfortunately, the reality is you have to be careful on social media as well. It is a bit of a minefield where you're expressing personal opinions. So, I mean, the main thing is, I don't know who's put in the concern, etc., etc. Having looked on the Good Thinking website, they do sometimes target individual practitioners, which might seem a bit mean. It depends a bit on what they've been advertising. So hopefully we can avoid someone getting trapped into kind of a deliberate attempt to blacken, just besmirch their name. Sign in your clinic. It all comes through ASA. And that's Alan helpfully answering. Fantastic. Yeah. Have we got any more questions? So hand up. If not, well done for sticking at it so far. I do actually have a surprise question for all of you, for which you might win a prize. Okay, so here is the prize. It's a bag of goodies, BAcC branded goodies, a pen, a notepad, coasters, and a chart. Okay, so the question is, I just point out, these are 7 things that after a case when the Royal Integrative Hospital was basically complained about for their advertising. There was a case heard by the ASA. They brought evidence to support their claims. These were the things they were told they were allowed to say. Oh, where's it gone? Ah, there you go. What happened there, Helen? Any ideas?
I do not know.
I'll try sharing my screen again.
Yeah, give that a go.
There we go. So it says 7 things. Now my question, and I think we want you to write in, don't we, Helen, sort of as in where you would put a comment, as the people have just been doing now. And when it says best, that means in my opinion, okay? I define what is best. So which line of evidence is the best to use to demonstrate that traditional acupuncture is effective, and why? Okay, so you've got 7 things. Have a look through. I'll have another drink of tea. And those of you who feel confident and brave, type in an answer and be prepared to say why. I'll get to your question in a minute, Lynn. So we've got 1 answer coming in. Short-term relief for chronic tension headaches. Short-term chronic head low back pain. Overactive bladder. I'll let a few more come in and then I'll... can we unmute people, Helen, and let them say why?
Yeah, we can do that if they're happy to speak.
If you're happy to speak. And I think if you unmute, you become visible. Short-term recovery. Short-term attention headache. Okay, so right then, interesting. Now I'm going to choose Sally Brooks, and she knows why. Former student. So Sally, are you willing to speak?
Hi Ian, how are you? I've seen you for a very long time.
Yes. Do you have an explanation?
I don't. It was a bit of a lucky punt because I know you like this subject.
I like knees. Because I win the knobbly knee contest every time. Okay.
I can't give a good answer for that one, sorry.
Sally, I know you're going to be really upset, but the bag is not going to you. That's not the right answer. So I will scroll up and see who was the first off the blocks. I'm going to look up or above. Paloma, are you happy to volunteer a verbal answer?
I put that because, as I remember, if it's not currently, it was the only thing that advertising was in the NICE guidelines. They got reduced.
Okay.
And I remember at one point, this might be a bit of a slightly not right mishmash, but I was under the impression that I could say that on my website. I mean, I didn't actually, but
okay.
Things that you could say that acupuncture could treat.
Okay, getting closer, but unfortunately the bag is not going to Paloma either. I will roll down and say, what was yours, Paloma? I just forgot. It was back pain, was it?
No, it was
no, sorry.
Headaches, short-term
headaches, beg your pardon. So someone who said back pain. There was a back pain one there. Oh, that's Pia. And now it's D. Is that right? No, Pia. Pia, why do you think low back pain? Is that okay for you to reveal yourself? No? It's all right. TM, sorry, I didn't work. I will move on then. Hi. Oh, Pia, there you are. So why did you think back pain?
Well, because there are so many studies, and they have been done, especially in Germany. There have been so many studies on back pain, and I just have a feeling that this was the one which got a lot of credence. So
based on volume?
Yeah.
Really? Okay, good. Unfortunately, Pia, the bag is not going to you either. Is it Ivy who's gone for the temporomandibular joint pain? Ivy, do you want to say?
Hi, sorry, I didn't hear the answer. My son was just talking to me.
That's all right, Ivy. I was just wondering whether you have a reason for choosing TMD.
Oh, because I haven't seen many articles around this particular condition and for this particular condition. I know the rest, there seems to be quite a lot of research around already, so more persuasive.
Right. So thank you, but you're not getting the bag either. And then Helen.
Thank you.
Helen, overactive bladder.
Well, it's very specifically written, talking about short-term improvement, very specific about electroacupuncture at the spleen 6 point. So I thought that maybe, and I know that it's one of the ones listed by ASA.
Yes,
likely to be accepted. So,
so
maybe that one.
You're going to get the bag. So we'll have to get your address somehow and send it to you. I say best in terms of what Ian thinks. And this is what I think. The reason why this one stands out as being different, and the word is specific here, because they name a specific point. Because they've named a specific point, it means it cannot be a placebo. Whereas all of the others will often be claimed by detractors to be due to the placebo effect. But because there's a specific point, it can't be sort of made up. It's easier to say, it's clearer that this is not part of the ritual, because you can use a different point and it doesn't work as well. The second thing is because it's spleen 6. So why did anyone do the research in the first place? It's because they'd read a Chinese medicine textbook that said spleen 6 does this. It's not something that is derived from the biomedical understanding. There hasn't been someone who hypothesized this, and therefore they decided to run clinical trials. This was taken from Chinese medicine. So the points like spleen 6 and pericardium 6 for nausea and vomiting kind of have a special option for us to put forward the case. First, that it's not a placebo. This is kind of the main thing we need to get across. But second, that we say, you wouldn't have been able to do this unless you'd been reading Chinese medicine textbooks. So you can't claim it's all based on a biomedical understanding of the body. So that's why I think this is quite interesting that they've highlighted. It has to be spleen 6. So that's the right answer. So well done, Helen. I don't know quite how, but if you can email me or something, let me know your address or just the office, and we will get that bag of goodies to you. I believe I missed somebody's question and I need to re-find that. Whose question was it? I missed the question. Okay, Ian, Helen had a question above which you haven't covered. Was that the same Helen? Can you repeat the question? Is this the question? Sorry, could the Helen whose question has not been answered just unmute and let me know what the question is, rather than scrolling my formal messages.
Hi, Ian, I've just popped it down in the chat box at the, right at the bottom.
Once the fact sheets are updated, will it be allowable to directly to them again, say if we create? It might be, but I would prefer not, because I think it's effectively a bit of a killer sentence of how you make sure the person who's reading it is not going to assume that there's evidence. That's the challenge, because it's just how you word it. And fundamentally, it will come down to the same issue. You don't have to take, I'm not going to forbid you to do it, but as long as when we get there, you run it past copy advice. And if they're happy with it, I'm happy with it. And then we can share it to everybody else, the wording that you came up with that solved the problem. My lack of creativity at the moment is preventing me from finding a sentence that's reasonably succinct that you could put there, that somebody who was of a mind to distort and make it look bad could succeed in doing. The second point is, I think we do need to get these simple messages out. The skeptics are very good at repeating simple messages on a wide variety of interlinked websites. They will say acupuncture, there's no evidence for acupuncture, and it's all a placebo, again and again, these two things. And that's why I think we have to use the chronic pain almost as a battering ram to prevent that being the commonly felt belief amongst people that, well, it's useful, but it's placebo. That's not the case. And we, because we are trying to put forward the value of studying the traditional side, that we can do it logically by saying, it's not the case. It does matter where you put the needles. And some points, as tested, have specific functions. And those functions come from the ancient text. So just because spleen 6 has been tested and we got the evidence. That doesn't mean that stomach 6 doesn't work. In fact, you would think it was likely that something about stomach 6 would be, stomach 36 or stomach 6, or it doesn't matter, would be effective. It's just no one has done the research yet. So the trendy, or the main research phrase is absence of evidence doesn't mean evidence of absence. And we have to get into the habit of pointing out, yeah, there is an evidence. No one has conducted the trials. That's why there is an evidence. In the conditions like chronic pain, they have conducted the trials, and acupuncture is the winner, as in it's better than all the other currently available options, and it's not a placebo. And we're very lucky as a profession to have this research, because no one's going to do it again. Literally tens of thousands of people, for thousands of people, because it costs so much money to run clinical trials. I mean, they might do it in China, I should say. They will do it in China, but we have a credibility issue which will take 5, 6, 10 years to overcome with Chinese research. So yes, you can, that's the answer, but make sure you pass it with copy advice. The fundamental bottom line, always copy advice. Above from Lynn, to clarify, we can use the info in an order in our own words. Yeah, for all people, I think you can take the advice that we've had up on the website for some time. Once we've got the reviewed guide to advertising, review it yours again, and do the best you can. I think, to be honest, some of the websites that have been flagged to us are somewhat subjective, let's say, a little bit on the borderline. They don't pop out as being outrageous. It's not like BAcC members are saying, come to me and you will walk on water and things like that. So we as an organization, when we get in touch with you, we're going to accept that there is ambiguity. And we just want you to use the copy advice as a backstop, as the main thing. And we can use that as an organization and improve our knowledge about how to advertise acupuncture, because there is not much from direct. I mean, we have been in touch with the ASA, asking them to come and give a talk and things. There isn't that much acupuncture specific stuff, but we will collect it through this process, and we will make our advice to the membership better and more accurate. So we need the advice that's going to be generated, the ideas generated from all the membership, and then we can move forward. And we are not going to just accept the status quo as well. We do want to push back, if you like, to the Advertising Standards Authority based on this new evidence. But we do, I think, need to get over the hurdle of pragmatic evidence, because once we've got over that hurdle, then a bunch more conditions will be advertisable, if that is indeed a word, but I doubt it. I tend to just point people to the BAcC website. Yep, that's fine. You can continue doing that. That's fine. And we will post haste try and get the fact sheets up and ready. But I do hope some of you will be able to join me in slagging off the acupuncture that was being carried out in some of these clinical trials, because that is our area of expertise. You know, the BAcC is not really in a position to do a large meta-analysis unless some of you out there are particularly familiar with Bayesian statistics and things like that, and have the computer programs to do it. It's a skill to be a statistician, and we don't necessarily employ statisticians, they're expensive. But our area of expertise is the acupuncture good enough? And is this sham likely to bias the results because it's far too active, it's far too close to what we would potentially do in scope of practice? Okay. Any more questions coming through? If not, then please, Helen, do let me know. Send me your address and I'll organise your goodie bag and we'll take it from there. Okay, so shall we finish, Helen, the other Helen?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.